Dr. Manmohan Singh will be remembered for his economic reforms, and someone who worked very closely with Dr. Manmohan Singh was Montek Singh Ahluwalia as the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission. He joins me live. Sir, thank you so much. You were responsible for actioning the vision of an economist prime minister. How was it like working with Dr. Manmohan Singh, and what was the clarity of thought that he gave you when you were working with him?
Well, I had known Dr. Manmohan Singh well before he became Prime Minister. As a matter of fact, he brought me into the Finance Ministry and then later on made me part of his team when he was Finance Minister. So I'd been working with him for quite a long time. And, he was a person of great clarity of vision. And anyone working for him knew exactly what his thinking was. He also encouraged you to give your own views. I mean, he didn't simply sort of say, well, this is my vision, and now you, as you say, implement it or action it. He said, look, this is my vision, and if you have a different view, you're free to express it. So it was a very exhilarating time when we were considering all kinds of new and different things. And you had the sense that different options were being weighed, which was pretty exciting for the period, actually.
And Montek Singh Ahluwalia, when you look at the legacy of the former Prime Minister, do you believe his policies had huge impact on India's economic growth as it is being talked about right now?
Well, I have no doubt about that whatsoever. As a matter of fact, when he first introduced these policies as finance minister, they represent a dramatic change from the policies that the government had been following for several years. And they were controversial. Even amongst academics, the tendency was to stick to the old rather than to be welcoming the new. But I think over time, there were people who believed that we needed to change. I think we had a fairly good system internally of trying to broaden the consensus. One way or the other, people came around to the view that we do need to change. And if you take the longer view, there's no doubt that if India today is viewed as a sort of a country that could well become the next superpower, if you like. We're not there yet, but it could well become. The very fact that we are positioned at a level where this opportunity is now opening up is because of the changes that were brought about after 1991. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that if we had not changed in 1991, we would be nowhere in the position we are in today. Second, the changes were not just done arbitrarily at one point. I mean, they were brought in by the Dr Manmohan Singh government with a lot of persuasion, a lot of effort to sort of bring people on board, make them understand, explain to them why their fears are not justified, etc. And the point is they were carried on by the next government. I mean, the Dr Manmohan Singh government was succeeded by the United Front government, which had two different prime ministers. I mean, Deve Gowda to begin with, and then in the Gujarat. And that government actually had the Communist Party of India as a constituent of the coalition. Nevertheless, it continued the liberalization policies of the previous government. They were then followed by the BJP under Atal Bihari Vajpayee. That government also continued. When I say continued, I don't just mean they mechanically continued. They built on it and took further steps. So in a way, it looked as if different political sides of India seem to have come around to the notion that India can move forward and we should work together to get it to move forward. And at any given time between a government and an opposition, there will always be a lot of conflict. I mean, that's the job of an opposition. But I think what people felt had been established over this period is that while India is a very noisy democracy, where you get a lot of criticism, when governments change, there's still a fair amount of continuity. So that succeeding governments built on what had been achieved by previous governments. And I think that is really the sign of a healthy economic debate or a process of building an economic consensus on economic policy. I think it's quite clear that that has been a success. And I mean, the economy during the UPA period when Dr. Singh was the Prime Minister, I mean, they had their problems, but overall, the growth rate of the economy was the highest ever. And what is more, it wasn't just a focus on GDP. Dr. Manmohan Singh was very, very concerned that the benefits of growth must go down to the poorest. So the whole concern with poverty reduction was a very central thing. And that during that period, you not only had fast growth, but you had very rapid reduction in poverty. And that has continued. So I think India is currently in a good position. We have lots of problems and we have to tackle them. So I don't think we should assume that everything is done. But we have a track record of having been able to tackle complex problems, and that should give people some confidence that we know what to do.
So when do you think the foundation for this right trajectory was laid?
Sorry?
And what role did Dr. Manmohan Singh play in that? The foundation, because you talk about how he was a consensus
absolutely.
builder.
I mean, look,
and you've emphasized on the fact that there has been continuity in the thoughts of multiple governments.
I think he played a very major role. First of all, as finance minister, he never counted simply on the fact that we would win a vote in Parliament. I mean, he was very concerned to persuade people on the opposition side the logic of what he was doing. In fact, I recall that, when he was finance minister, at one point he had been discussing with Mr. Vajpayee that we need to move forward in a particular direction. And Mr. Vajpayee was, in private, was in agreement with this. But later on, some other members of the BJP were critical of Dr. Manmohan Singh. And Dr. Manmohan Singh mentioned this to Mr. Vajpayee, that, how come after we discuss this, some other members of your party take a different view? And Mr. Vajpayee told him that, if you want to be in politics, you must learn to have a thick skin. So it's an interesting example that, you can get some agreement, but in a different form, that agreement may not always last. So I think one of his lasting legacies is that you need to think a lot about how to balance the pros and cons of a policy, take on board the different points of view, strike a balance, and build a consensus. And I think if we continue to do that, and different governments in their own way have tried to do that, I think we will be in economically good position for the next 10 or 20 years.
All right, sir, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.